everybody, and thanks for being here today. Let's see. Mr. Camardi, you're going to have the invocation this morning, and Mr. Aycock, you got the pledge.
Yes, sir.
And we'll do minutes, and let's talk about the change in discussion adjustment of the agenda.
Yes, sir. Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We do have two things. I think Allison has some budget amendments also that need to be walked on as well. But we do have two things to the agenda that need to be added. Number one is Resolution 15, a resolution that will amend the county's personnel policy. Currently, under our personnel policy, when we look at accumulated vacation, we look at accumulated vacation based upon time of service for other agencies. We need to make that change that is based upon time of service with Wayne County.
Is that under new business?
Yeah, you're going to put that under new business. It's number 4.
We can do it on consent as well if you want.
Oh, can?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll make it number 7 under consent. How about that?
We've reviewed this with HR and also our county attorney and staff attorney, but this needs to clarify that vacation accrual is only based upon service for Wayne County.
Okay.
Oh, thank you.
Get too much stuff this morning.
Not one more book, we're going to have a bigger desk. Ed and I are going to be reading off the same paper here shortly.
I think we got a redwood going across all this time. I'm telling you. Anything else?
And the other one is, and we can put this under consent as well, is a resolution supporting the application for a grant from the North Carolina 911 Board. As the board's aware, we've been working with Mission Critical, trying to look at options to help fund our OES 911 Center. Duplin County has agreed to come and allow Wayne County to serve as its backup PSAP. So they have passed a resolution in support of that. We need to pass a very similar resolution in support that we'll submit to the 911 Board, which will greatly enhance our position in hopefully getting some hard costs and some hard dollars and hopefully a very sizable piece of funding when we go looking at building the 911 Center.
Did we need any other counties, or just one will work, or
just one will work right now?
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
yeah.
Did I read somewhere that the grant application was to be submitted by the 15th of this month?
I believe so. We're in good shape, though. The grant, I think, has been submitted, but this is the backup.
Yes, and
Right.
we made reference to this paperwork. It didn't have to be turned in at this point in time. We've made reference to it that
Right.
if they requested.
And they're going to be making a decision in July, is that correct?
And we should know something in August.
August? Okay.
Right.
Okay.
But we can put this under consent as well.
Okay, I'll make that number 8 under the consent agenda. Any other additions?
And that's all I have at this time. Thank you.
Commissioners, any other changes? Okay. Then we'll have special recognition, and normally in June we usually have a lot, as I recall. Public comments, and then we'll have a public hearing at 9:15 concerning the MIL2 ATP. And I talked to Chris, and most likely he will not be here, so, because I didn't realize he was a full-time airline pilot. So he's probably flying somewhere today, but he's anxious for us to move forward with this. So I just thought I'd share that. And then we'll recess the commissioners' meeting and convene the Board of Adjustment. Do that and come out of that and reconvene the Board of Commissioners meeting. And well, let's just go ahead and move on into budget amendments, Ms. Allison, if you would.
Okay. We'll start with the ones that are in your agenda packet first. First one is for services on aging. They are requesting to anticipate and appropriate MIPA funds. This is Medicare Improvements for Patient and Providers Act. They just received these grant funds, but they will probably be reappropriated into the next year since they're getting them late in this fiscal year. For the tax department, we're requesting to reallocate some professional services funds for salaries. This is to pay out vacation time to an employee who is changing to a part-time status.
Could I get further explanation on that?
Yes, sir. This employee was a full-time employee with us several years ago. Then she transitioned to a permanent part-time employee, so permanent part-time employees actually still receive benefits. She has now become just a regular part-time where she's not going to receive benefits. So we have to pay out what she's owed, and then she will not get any other benefits after that.
So that includes not only permanent part-time, but also when she was a full-time?
I'm not to be honest with you, I'm not really sure if we paid out. I'm assuming it is just when she was a permanent part-time employee.
It
I can
seems
check
like
with Alan to be
a large
sure.
amount for vacation, I mean.
It could be from when she was full-time. We can check on that for you.
Please do.
Okay. For the detention center, we're requesting to reallocate $23,600. This is for medical costs for the detention center, and their inmate population, as you all know, has increased, and so has the associated medical cost. We have another one for the detention center. They're requesting to reallocate $51,000 for the food services contract, and it is pretty much for the same reason. The higher population has resulted in higher food service cost.
Excuse me, and that's just carrying us through the end of this month?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And they're reallocating that from existing line items. For the detention center, we have one to anticipate misdemeanor jail fees for $15,000 to offset additional extra help. They had several vacancies in their part-time positions, so they were using more full-time officers. They've now got those vacancies in part-time filled, so they needed some funds to make sure that they had those positions covered. For the Maxwell Center, requesting to anticipate $5,713 in facility rental fees, and this is just to cover some various operating expenditures that have taken place over the last few months and to get us through the rest of the year. For the Sheriff's Office, they're requesting to reallocate several line items within the Sheriff's Office budget and the SRO budget. And I think it was brought up that the SRO overtime should be billed out to the schools. Rather than changing the budget amendment, they're just reallocating within their line items, and that will just fall out. But we will end up billing the schools for that. So I did check on that at Borden's request.
I've just got a question in regards to SRO overtime.
Okay.
How would that occur?
Well,
I mean, the school's only open 5 days.
my understanding is that when the incident happened, I cannot remember, it's been a few months ago, additional SROs were requested, and I think they're having to use some of their full-time or part-time or full-time officers to cover that SR shortage until we get additional SROs hired.
So that should eliminate it at that point.
The agreement that we have with the Board of Education is that they cannot use our SROs more than 40 hours a week. If they do, they have to pay them, keep. And if they are paying them, they pay them whatever the sheriff says they have to pay them, as opposed to us having to pay them overtime, which we would have to do if they use them more than 40 hours a week. That was clearly in the agreement that we have.
Could that overtime have been in reaction to what happened in Florida, and there was a uptick of activity?
That's possible. I couldn't tell you for sure.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
So, Mr. Parker, you're saying that if they work over 40 hours, it's the school's Board of Education or school system responsibility to pay them that overtime?
It's their responsibility not to ask them to work as SROs under the sheriff more than 40 hours a week. And if they need them, say for instance, they've worked the 40 hours a week, but they want them to be at a ball game or anything, then they hire them. The sheriff has an agreement that deputies working for somebody other than him get a certain amount per hour, just like the police department does.
Well, does the school system pay the county, or do they pay the sheriff department?
They should be paying directly to the individual who is working.
The individual who's working.
Who is working. If they paid us, we'd have to pay overtime.
So I'm still confused on why while we were involved in paying the overtime.
Because apparently they didn't take them off of our clock and put them on theirs the way they should have.
So we're being penalized for somebody else's slack work.
She's right, but she's getting the money back from the Board of Education.
Oh, well,
Okay, all right, as long as you're getting it back. Okay, all right.
Okay, number 621 for the Sheriff's Office, requesting to reallocate line items within the SRO budget. This is, I've asked Sandra to look into this, but basically, I think they had a few individuals that received increases late last year in the budget in April, and the budget was not adjusted for 17-18 when they received those increases, so this year they've experienced a shortfall and need to adjust for that. But that should be corrected in the 18-19 budget now. For the fire districts, you actually have a blank budget amendment and then an attachment behind that. This is something we do every year. We have to pay out to the fire departments what we receive, and obviously when we budget, we don't know what that exact amount will be, so we have to do a budget amendment at the end of the year to true up those numbers, pay out what they've received for the end of the year. So this is, most of it is property taxes. There is some sales tax monies that they've over-collected. All of them are higher than what we anticipated.
So this is above and beyond
What we budgeted in the beginning of 17-18.
Okay,
That's
well,
right.
this reoccurs just about every year, doesn't it?
Yes, sir, it does.
Okay.
The only question I have is, where does sales tax come into play on fire departments? I thought they had their own fire tax.
They do.
Where's the sales tax from?
Because we are under the ad valorem method of allocating sales tax, we have to distribute a portion to them, and I'm trying to say this correctly, Borden, correct me if I'm wrong, we have to distribute a portion to them of sales tax based on how they receive their property taxes, I believe. Okay.
They get a piece of it just like the
Yes.
municipalities do because they're a taxing agency. They have an ad valorem tax, so just like the municipalities, they get a piece of it.
I have a question for you, Greg. If they are getting this much, some of these fire departments getting this much back, why are they charging the people out of so much on their tax if they were going to get this kind of money back every year?
Well, it's not that they're necessarily, it's really that we might have estimated what they were going to get incorrectly. I mean, some of these, like, for instance, there's one for sales tax that's $15,000, $15,968. It could be that we just underestimated what they were to receive. It's not that they're getting anything above and beyond anybody else. It's just, we're just truing up what they actually received to budget. Are there any other questions on that one?
And this is real property tax overage.
That's correct. I don't see, there is one vehicle tax at the top. That's it. The rest of them are real property tax and sales tax.
For 5 years, I sit here at the end of every budget year and see this large list of dollars that catches things up. And it's always a few of the fire departments that are getting a windfall. I'm going to call it a windfall at the end of each year because they didn't budget it. They create the budgets. We don't create the budgets. They create the budgets. And my question is, I go back to Commissioner Bell's comment and question. If they are overestimating or underestimating their costs so that they have this, why would they not consider a reduction in their fire tax throughout the entire district?
Well, their revenues, we assist them with budgeting those because, we basically collect that for them. So we do assist them with that. But some of these, I'm not, to be honest with you, I'm not really sure. Like, you've got some property taxes that are that are much higher than what we anticipated. It could be that there was additional listings in a company, new equipment was bought, that kind of thing.
Could I request a report? You'd go
Sure.
back 5 years on those and give us a breakdown of those particular fire departments and what the ending budget amendment is at the end of the fiscal year, or to give us an idea of whether or not they're underestimating revenues.
You want the last 5 years of their final revenue they received?
No, this budget amendment. This budget
Oh,
amendment.
you want the
that
last
we
5
get
years of this
every
budget
year.
amendment? Okay.
So, as an example, where you've got, I'll pull one, Belfast has 13,725.
Right.
I'd like to see what the trend line is over the last 5 years.
Okay. We can do that.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'm gonna kind of throw Allison and her group under the bus for just a second. The fire departments get a worksheet from the county, and that's what the fire departments work off of. I mean, because the fire departments, they do not have a clue how to estimate what sales tax is gonna come in or anything. Every one of them is primarily working off of that worksheet.
Right, that's right.
And if y'all didn't provide that worksheet, I mean, God knows what this figure would be.
Right, that's why I
But
say
they're
we do
relying,
assist
they're
them with their
relying on
revenues.
our finance department to supply that worksheet so they'll know how to work their budget, but they don't have a clue exactly what the income's going, what their tax is going to bring in. They're relying all on that worksheet that they get from the county.
Well, and also sales tax is a fluctuating revenue as well. So that is, you do have to true it up at year end. You really do. So sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down. So,
Mr. Carter?
I have a question that has to do with equitable, if not equal. I see such a large spread of revenues to fire departments. And to me, I wonder if it's not good luck or something that may cause some to be real large, some, and then bad luck for some to be real small. Because it has to do with property tax that is generated by the value of the property that's in that district. And by the good works of good luck, some building or some entity may move into a certain district. And all of a sudden, if you're dealing with property tax, unless I miss it, their revenues could escalate. You got someone over here in another fire district that got some of the same number of houses, and difficulty of trying to put the fire out, but they're lower valued and therefore generate less revenues. Now, I understand that we have contracts.
Yes.
Are they written similarly across the? And therefore, it's just a question. Is there some way that those contracts could be adjusted so that once a fire department had a budget and that budget was fulfilled, just because it happened that that area, for whatever reason, maybe had the good luck of getting a building or something that caused that to escalate, why wouldn't that be spreaded across all of the fire departments after a budget was reached per a district? They're held harmless, don't lose nothing, but those dollars could be spread so that there was equitable.
I think on the flip side of that, if I'm the fire department and you're adding more valuation to my district, you're adding more responsibility to my district, would be the fire department's argument, that you're adding that responsibility back to my district, so therefore I need that additional funding to make sure we're adequately doing what we're supposed to be doing within the district and as far as service.
Well, since my good friend to my right asked for a report for something, and I would like for someone maybe to look back over 5 years to see if there was an escalation in any fire department that would cause them to maybe bust their budget so we could see if, in truth, sir, what you just said.
There's some
That
outliers.
happened.
There's some outliers there, and you know, the FH Lee plan is probably a good outlier as far as what evaluation is in a fire district. I think that's in the Marmac district. So there are outliers out there that are that large that really do change the face of some districts' fire departments.
Don't we have something on the way?
We have a recycling plant that we're going to.
That's not going to affect this year's budget. Can we address that?
We can't.
That's going to be something
Upcoming
to
year.
address in this upcoming year.
Yeah.
Well, I can appreciate that if we're in a hurry. I would not want
Right.
that question to be overlooked just because it's convenient to push it down the road
Right.
a year. Because if I understand correctly, that entity is on the way.
But we
And
still need to be
looking down the
thinking
road. I mean, I'm just talking about equitable and equal.
Yeah,
and
we
I
still
don't
need to
have
be
a-
thinking about that Lee plant, because that's going to be a big dollar item, so.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
this does relate to what we're talking about, and then again, it's not directly. You know, we had discussed a training facility out at the college. You know, and you can look at the budgets of the different fire departments, and there is a wide spread. And that was one reason we were trying to consolidate and figure out where we could get some funds to have a training facility that would be usable by all the departments, the ones with the large budgets and also the small budgets. But as everyone knows, we've been talking about tax increase and teachers' pay and all that kind of stuff. And to be honest, a facility right now, this was not the year. I mean, I never brought it up because we've got too many other issues right now. But this is an issue that we need to look at in the future to try to provide a little more service and a little more training facility and all for those smaller departments. And me and Ms. Honeycutt has already discussed some ways that we think we may be able to, but what we've discussed is not going to affect this year's budget any at all. But I understand why they want to report and all. I mean, that's a good, honest question. But really, some of what we're talking about right now is not going to affect this year's budget. And just as soon as we get this one nailed down, then we can start addressing some of those issues. Is that kind of where we're going?
Yes, sir. We've talked about, we understand that there is some inequitably, I can't even say the right word. That how can we best utilize the assets that we have for public safety?
Right.
And so for all of public safety, not just one specific district.
Right.
And I was asking Commissioner Gurley, it seems it's going to take more than a year to build that facility, so it may be even the following year.
Yeah.
Right.
So, you know, but your points are well made, though.
But this year, I mean, I've had calls from fire departments, and I've explained to them, this is just not the year that we can make anything happen. I mean, everything is a priority, but some priorities are a little bit higher than others, and this is just one year. I mean, this year, it's going to be difficult.
Yes, sir. Yes.
So, I'm sorry. One last part. So, this has been discussed by some commissioners with you?
Since Commissioner Aycock is kind of our fire commissioner, we've had that discussion.
This has not been discussed between a bunch of commissioners.
No.
I just
said some.
Yeah. Mr. Aycock and I really the only ones that have had the
it's not
more
some, it's just
in-depth.
one.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I agree with Commissioner Aycock. The fire chiefs that I've talked to don't have a problem in possibility of waiting. But one of the questions that I've been asked is they're concerned about, they want to make sure that the training tower out at the jetport remains in place until something is done. That was the question I was asked.
I don't think that's going to be a problem at all.
Yeah. but they're willing to get by with what they have. The ones that I've talked to.
Can I, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
one more time, right quick, and then I'll hush. And what Mr. Mayo just said is because we've got several departments. I mean, it rotates around. All the departments in the county is not graded by Department of Insurance at one time. It rotates, and right now we've got several that's on the list to be graded in August. And one of the things that we're going to lose points on is we do not have, and correct me Mel if I'm wrong, we do not have a training facility that's 3 stories or taller. And that's one of the things, I mean, if you've only got a training facility that's 2 stories high, and the state requires that you train on something that's 3 stories high, that's going to affect the grade, or not the grade, not necessarily, but the points on every single fire department in the county. And that was one of their concerns is we need something, but they all understand that it can't happen this year. But that's one of the reasons that their concern is because they're losing points when they're graded by not having a proper training tower.
Mr. Booth.
I'm through.
I just want to clear up one thing. Mr. Cromartie challenged Mr. Aycock about whether or not he had talked to the county manager or not. But Mr. Aycock may be saying it wrong to make us think that he made a decision.
No.
And you can't do that.
He made a decision.
Well, that's the way you told it. You figured that you and the county manager got together and decided something. You can't do that, even though you might be the commissioner, but you got to bring it back to the board.
That hadn't been done.
Okay.
We've discussed it.
Just want to make
but
sure.
We've discussed it, but
we've
no one on this,
discussed-
But I said-
no one on this board can make a
I said
decision.
it may be your fault the way you told it here this morning.
Okay.
But no decisions have been made. We've just had discussions.
We're gonna move on.
Discussions.
Okay, let's move on. We're getting hung up there, so, please.
For fleet
No, I didn't say
management,
you had. I said the way you told it this morning.
for fleet management, requesting to anticipate and appropriate an additional $5,000. They've over-collected on their revenue, but they also need, they have additional expenditures for parts, so they're requesting to anticipate those monies. For services on aging, requesting to appropriate donations received in the amount of $1,935. For social services, they're requesting to reallocate $12,500 to temporary help services. This was incorrectly coded to special adoptions and needs to be moved to the correct line item. For the sewer, they're requesting to anticipate and appropriate $3,633.60 to anticipate insurance settlement funds received. And number 648 is also related to the same insurance settlement. They're reallocating within the line item. I think the insurance proceeds were put in the wrong line item. They're reallocating to non-capital equipment, which is where it should be. We have another one for the sewer, reallocating $18,000 to user fees. This is to transfer funds for the, to cover the rest of the sewer bills for the city of Goldsboro. For EMS, we're requesting to reallocate monies for unscheduled overtime and extra help. This is to align the salaries with the latest lap salaries report and cover us through the remainder of the fiscal year. For Wayne Net, requesting to reallocate line items within their salaries as well, and this is for the same reason. They're matching up to the latest lap salaries report and to cover us through the remainder of the fiscal year. For the Maxwell Center, anticipating and appropriate $5,000 in facility rental revenue, and this is to cover laundry services, but this will also be billed out under facilities fees. The walk-on budget amendments I have for you is the packet I passed out a while ago. There's a memo attached, and then there are several budget amendments. The first one is for social services. They are requesting to reduce the amount of daycare revenue and associated expenditures for the daycare program. This is because, and I want to make sure I say this correctly, the state is taking over payments of the daycare vendors. So that was run through the county at one point, and the state is supposed to be moving those payments through NC Fast, which is why the money is being reduced. However, I did talk to Tammy about the personnel that it takes to process those payments. They still have to determine eligibility within the county social services office, and all of that work has to be done by the county social services office. The only thing that is actually changing is the checks are being printed at the state office rather than the county office. So I wanted to be real clear about what this change entails. They still have to do all of the eligibility and the research and things like that within the county social services department. It's just where the check's actually going to be cut.
Would it still not save us a little bit of money in personnel cost? Since we don't have to write the checks and mail them out and all that kind of stuff.
The only thing it really does probably is cuts down on the number of checks we're going to write in a month.
Yeah.
I don't know how many we write in a month. But
Finance is the one who actually cuts, our finance department.
Right.
Who actually cuts it.
But all the payment processing, everything else as far as the paperwork still has to be done
So
in
they
the
were just
county.
pass through dollars anyway, right?
Right. That's right.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
when is this supposed to take effect? Do you know, Alice?
Well, I think the original plan was like for this spring, but they pushed it off. And I don't know at this point if they have a hard and fast. I think they keep running into issues.
Okay,
I think
yeah, go ahead.
I think they have some pilot counties that are out there doing it, and they're kind of testing the waters to see how it's going.
This is the part of the new NC Fast software and stuff that's coming out. Look, I wouldn't bet on it. It's already been put off. So, you know.
And if it
there's so many
continues to be
issues.
put off, you may see a budget amendment in the 18-19 budget.
Right.
Because if we have to keep processing those payments, they'll have to send the revenue through us. So it's kind of up in the air right now.
It is. Yep. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I hate to keep asking questions, but this doesn't make sense, because if they haven't implemented the program yet through NC Fast, and we are at the end of this fiscal year, why would we be making any adjustment in this fiscal year? Because we're still processing it all.
Well, I may have to ask Tammy when she gets here for the budget work session, but I think they didn't end up processing as many as they thought they were going to. So I may need to ask Tammy to verify that. Will you write that down for her?
Please do.
Good idea.
Yeah.
Good question.
I mean, that's a good question. That's
Okay.
fair.
Thank you.
Okay, for the Office of Emergency Services, they are requesting to reallocate within their line items for the workers' comp. This is the fire department policy, workers' comp policy, and we do a budget amendment, or we budget for the original budget, but then they do an audit to determine what the actual premium should be, and that did come in a little bit higher. So we're reallocating from existing line items. For social services, this is the budget amendment to reduce the fund balance that was appropriated in the original budget, and instead to transfer monies in the amount of $1.2 million from the general fund. And I think I had provided you all with some of the reasons that Tammy and Vicki and myself and Janice have been looking at, along with Craig, and they've also been working with their state LBL on that. So are there any questions about anything that any of those? Well, I know. Any questions that I can answer?
You hit us with a $1.2 million change. Is there any question? I'll let you go.
First.
Well, being chairman of the DSS board, I don't want to throw anyone under the bus here, but this is the first time that I have heard anything at all about this big of a deficit. And that's the only thing that's bothering me. We have been having our DSS meetings. I want to know who, or if anybody, if Tammy Shrinker knew or anyone knew at DSS what kind of shape we were putting ourselves in. Can anybody answer that?
This is kind of something she inherited, and I've been mentioning it in some of the meetings that we've had, that we've been looking at DSS and working with them over the past few months, because we could see that their cash was in the negative, frankly. We just didn't have a figure yet.
Okay, I have one more question, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind for a follow-up. I see in your email that the Contra account that was put in place was new and reduced our lapsed salaries amount by $785,000. What is the Contra account, and did we have to implement it?
Okay, a contra account is, so, like, for social services, they're in Fund 126, which is a general fund account, but we anticipate every year, we budget for their salaries at 100%. Whether those positions are filled or not, we budget those salaries at 100% cost. Okay, we know that we're not going to have all positions filled all 12 months out of the fiscal year. So we're going to, in essence, have some savings from that, but we don't know what that amount is. Historically, prior to last year, we have been using that savings to fall out into their fund balance, which is kind of what helped cushion the county expenditures of DSS. Okay, last year, we were requested to put in a contra account, which essentially reduces that savings that you would have experienced on salaries. And we had never had a contra account in this fund before, and it was in the amount of $785,000.
Yes.
So I personally think that is a big contributor to part of this problem, because we've been used to all these years having that fund balance and having that cushion.
Yes. And one more thing, Mr. Chairman, can I have just one more short follow-up? You said we were asked to put in a
Yes, sir.
contra account. Was it mandatory that we do it?
No, sir.
Why did we do it then? Why wouldn't we have the $785,000 still for lap salaries?
It was a recommendation by the prior county manager.
Well, my gosh.
Well,
Joe, I'm done. Joe, I'm done. Go ahead.
Look, you went right to the meat of that.
What I think, what they were looking at is historically there was that amount of lap salary, and looking at, last year we did have a difficult budget. The difference we had this year is we've been closer to full employment within DSS than we've had in the past. I think we looked at yesterday, we may be down to only 11 positions, which is about 6% of DSS is not, as far as where we're at with respect to full employment. So we're at 94% of full employment right now. So historically, I think we've been around 80% of full employment. So I think with the changes that we have made with our new director coming in, some of the culture changes that have occurred at DSS of people really wanting to come back and work for Wayne County, we're not losing the employees like we have had in the past.
That is correct.
And so that, along with being at full employment, almost, 94% is pretty close to full employment. Then, you had that contra account that we budgeted lap salaries. It was kind of the perfect storm for this year.
We also had several positions added, if you recall, at the beginning of the budget, or I think it was April of last year, effective for 17-18. It was those, I think it was 11 or 12 positions that Mr. Merritt brought before you.
Yes.
And he was planning to use the open positions that are always kind of out there rotating to fund it. But when you cut that lap salaries amount out from under it, it didn't quite work.
Joe, may I ask a question?
Sure, go right ahead.
I got one follow-up too.
Could we call that contra account, and the way it was used in the past, a junior general surplus?
Oh.
Well, if you have an account sitting over here that you're going to depend on, and you've got it sitting over there, and you use it to balance things, and then you hire people. One time it was 24, 25 people that was short. Now we're down to 11. It sort of makes sense that if you had a pocket of money in some previous years, contra account, whatever you call it, and then you put things in place to eat up that, use it, you gotta come back to the mother lode to get something. So, in understanding, I think what the former county manager did, were operating over that hand, and all of a sudden that hand got used up. You got to come back to the big hand to get some more. And
And we're trying to reduce that contra account. We're not, obviously cannot do it all at one time. That's just too large of an amount. So in the 18-19 budget, we reduced it by $50,000. So that's the best that we feel like we can do without the county having to absorb all of that at one time.
Yeah, follow up.
And also, we used to have a good fund balance within our DSS account, and now that fund balance is basically depleted. And so that is part of the issue that we cannot go back to that fund balance, and where we've had in the past where you could say, well, we'll just take it out of the DSS fund balance and not the general fund balance. We don't have that luxury.
Mr. Mayor.
One more follow-up,
Yes, sir.
ladies. I see on your email that you sent out that the $785,000 was for lapse salary was a contributor. What would we be looking at on this budget amendment if we still had the $785,000 lapse salaries in place? Would that be directly off of that 1.2 budget amendment we're looking at?
I think it would definitely reduce it. I can't tell you that it would be dollar for dollar because, I mean, the year's actually not over yet that this $785,000 is in place.
Well,
So,
I'm going to say that the contra account, this is where I'm coming from, being on the DSS board, is that I would not have been in favor of doing this for the simple reason that just because we have lower vacancies doesn't mean that that situation can change in 2 weeks.
Right.
We have such a high turnover in certain areas of DSS. We need the lapse salaries. Is there any way in the world that we could go back and redo this? Because would this not help the county as to what we got to take out of our fund balance if we still had a lapse salaries?
Well, not really, because he used it to balance the budget in 17-18. So
It's gone.
if you take it out, you've got to cover it somehow. I mean, it really wouldn't help. That's why we're trying to reduce it slowly, because it's too much for us to eat at one time.
Mr. Chairman, just a quick comment. We've got a problem here, and we need to address it very rapidly. You state that you've had some discussions with
Yes.
Tammy over the last several months. We can't take months. We've got a bleeding going on, and Mr. County Manager, you need to sit down and find a solution. to that.
We're working on that, and there's some things that we're also looking at, and I did mention at the DSS board meeting yesterday, some things that we're looking at internally for the upcoming year's budget. There may be some freezes on some positions. There may be, 60, 90-day delay in some of the positions. So we fully understand that we have an issue. The other thing that, as the board's aware, we've had to put $200,000 in next year's budget for new computers, for NC Fast.
Yes.
We've hit the tsunami this year as far as DSS, between the contra account, no fund balance, and then almost being at 94% employment. So for us, that's the tsunami.
Okay.
Is that a fair statement?
Yes, I mean, there are several other contributing factors to this, and I think Tammy is probably the best one to explain that. I did allude to some of that in the email, but there are several things.
Right.
I didn't want to get into the weeds too much on the email because, I mean, there's a lot of intricacies when it comes to DSS.
We're working on.
There were two things in this budget this year that really troubled me. One was the low wealth. That's been taken care of, and this is the other. And I've been looking at this. This is what has really scared me.
Yes, sir.
And this came from, enough said. We need to move on.
We are working on it.
Okay. The next one is for workers, our workers' comp fund. We're increasing our anticipation from the employer contributions of $20,000 to offset claims. The workers' comp fund is still in good shape. I mean, we're not taking it out of fund balance or anything like that. The claims have exceeded costs, but we also expect our revenue to come in over. And then the final two that you have before you are for social services and sheriff's office, and these are reallocations within those budgets to meet some insurance deductibles.
Okay. Are you done?
That's it, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, moving on, let's see.
Excuse me.
Yes.
I mean, throw me up. Okay. No? Okay. Thank you very much.
And I think both the next two things are also in your bailiwick too, for the conflict of interest policy and the recommendations for the internal control, and that's in the agenda.
Yes, sir. Those have to do with some new guidelines that are coming down from the federal government, the uniform guidance, and those are things that we need to have in place by July 1 to make sure that we are in compliance with those new guidelines.
And that's the purchase policy and procedures as well.
Purchasing policy, the conflict of interest policy, and then we also have an internal control policy that was associated with these guidelines recommended by our auditor.
Okay. After that, we'll be need a motion to approve these Carolina pyrotechnics that's going to be used at the Berkeley Mall for the July 4th celebration. And then we have a donated property owned jointly with the city of Goldsboro to Habitat. And then number 7 will be the personnel policy we talked about earlier added on, and 8, the grant application for 911. New business, a motion to approve the 2018 County Summer Learning Day Proclamation.
There will be some amendments.
Okay. And then Ms. Spate will present the quarterly financial statement for the county, and she'll also do these, after that, she'll do the tourism development for the year. Manager's comments, committee reports, and then we will have a closed session. I don't know that we have time to do much this morning. Okay, we'll do that afterwards. Okay. And then we'll do our budget session and then Board of Committees information. So for now, we've got about a little less than 10 minutes, so let's just all kind of take a break and get ready to start the show.
I do want to follow up
I'm sorry.
on one thing. Alan Lumpkin was listening and heard the question asked about vacation. That was the total vacation payout from since she's been here, even when she was full-time.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We'll be right back.